Put your hand on the table. Go on. Just lay it flat. Feel that? Feel the warmth where your palm meets the wood? Your hand is warm, about 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. That warmth is energy, real, measurable, physical energy. And I want to ask you the dumbest possible question about it. Where does it go? Not someday, not philosophically, I mean physically. When you die, when your body stops, when that warmth leaves your hand and your skin goes cold, where does the energy go? Does it vanish? Does it float away into some metaphysical fog? Does the universe just lose something when you stop breathing? Because here is what we know right at the start, before we get into any of the fancy business. We know with about as much certainty as we know anything in physics that energy cannot be created or destroyed. That is the first law of thermodynamics. It is one of the most tested, most reliable, most unforgiving statements human beings have ever made about nature. Energy is conserved. Always. Everywhere. No exceptions have ever been found. Not in any experiment. Not in any corner of the cosmos. Not ever. So if that is true, and your body is full of energy right now, and one day your body will stop, then the energy has to go somewhere. Every single bit of it. And figuring out exactly where it goes and how it gets there and what form it takes along the way turns out to teach you more about what you are, physically, than almost any other question I can think of. All right, let us start with just the warmth. Forget everything else about your body for a moment. Forget your thoughts, forget your muscles, forget your bones. Just think about the fact that you are warm. Why are you warm? Because inside every one of your cells, right now, little chemical reactions are happening. Molecules are being broken apart and reassembled. And each time that happens, a little bit of energy is released as heat. You have got trillions of cells doing this simultaneously, all day, all night, even while you sleep. Your body is like a furnace that never quite shuts off. Awake, asleep, thinking, not thinking, the heat keeps coming, until it does not. And what is heat actually? What is it physically? This is important. Heat is motion, that is all it is. The molecules in your hand are jiggling and vibrating and bumping into each other, and the faster they jiggle, the warmer you feel. Temperature is just our way of measuring how much random molecular motion is happening in a substance. When I say your hand is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, what I'm really saying is that the molecules in your hand are vibrating at a certain average speed. Each one is doing its own thing, some faster, some slower, but on average they are moving at a speed that corresponds to what we call body temperature. You can feel this, by the way. If you press your hand against a cold window in winter, the glass feels cold not because coldness is flowing into you, but because heat is flowing out. The fast jiggling molecules in your warm hand bump into the slow jiggling molecules in the cold glass, and some of that kinetic energy transfers from your molecules to the glass molecules. Your hand loses energy, the glass gains it, you feel cold. The glass, if it could feel, would feel a tiny bit warmer. So when you die, what happens to all that molecular vibration? Well, it does not stop instantly. This is something people do not always think about. Your hand does not go cold the moment your heart stops. It takes hours. And during those hours, the heat in your body is doing exactly what heat always does. It is flowing from where it is warm to where it is cooler. Your body radiates infrared light. Every warm object does this. Right now you are glowing in infrared. You cannot see it with your eyes, but a thermal camera can. That infrared radiation carries energy away from your body and into the surroundings. Your body also conducts heat into whatever surface it is resting on, a bed, a floor, the ground. And the air touching your skin picks up some of that warmth through convection. The warmed air rises and mixes with cooler air, carrying your thermal energy outward, dispersing it into the room, into the building, into the atmosphere. And where does that warmed air end up? It rises, it mixes, it spreads. Your body heat, the very same heat that kept you alive for decades, is now warming the room you are in by some absolutely tiny fraction of a degree, maybe 1,000th of a degree, maybe less, but it is there. And eventually some of that thermal energy radiates out past the atmosphere, out past the moon, out as infrared photons traveling at 186,000 miles per second into the void between the stars. A photon that was born from the jiggling of a molecule in your left hand, carrying a tiny quantum of the energy that once kept you warm, sailing through interstellar space forever. That is not poetry. That is physics. So that is just the heat, just the warmth in your hand. And already it has not vanished. It has spread out, changed form, traveled. But it is still there, still energy, still accounted for in the great ledger of the universe. But the heat was only the smallest fraction of the energy your body contained. Let me add another layer. Right now, your body is storing energy in chemical form, enormous amounts of it compared to the thermal energy. You ate food today, presumably. Maybe some toast, maybe some rice, maybe an egg. Whatever it was, your digestive system broke it down into smaller molecules, amino acids, fatty acids, simple sugars, and your cells took those pieces and reassembled them into molecules they could use. The most important molecule for energy purposes is one called adenosine triphosphate. That is a mouthful, so biologists just call it ATP. I will call it the energy molecule because that is what it does. It is the battery that powers almost everything in your cells. When a muscle needs to contract, it cracks open an energy molecule and uses the energy released by breaking one of its chemical bonds. When a nerve needs to fire a signal, same thing. When your cells need to build a new protein or copy a strand of DNA or pump ions across a membrane, they crack open an energy molecule. And here is the surprising part. You have got, at any given moment, only about 50 grams of this stuff in your whole body. 50 grams. That is less than the weight of a candy bar. But you use it so fast that your body recycles it constantly. You make and break down roughly your own body weight in energy molecules every single day. If you weigh 70 kilograms, you are churning through something like 70 kilograms of ATP in 24 hours, but you never have more than 50 grams of it on hand at any moment. The turnover rate is astonishing. It is like having a bank account where you deposit and withdraw your entire life savings every few minutes. And what does your body spend all this energy on? Let us be specific because the details matter. Start with your brain. Right now, your brain is consuming roughly 20% of all the energy your body produces. 20%. Your brain weighs about 2% of your body mass, but it demands a fifth of your total energy supply. That is an extravagantly greedy organ. And what is it doing with all that energy? Running electrical signals. Your neurons fire by moving charged ions, sodium, potassium, calcium, back and forth across their membranes through tiny protein channels. Every thought you have, every sensation you feel, every word you understand, is a cascade of ions flowing through these channels, powered by energy molecules. Your thoughts are electrochemistry. They are energy being converted from chemical form to electrical form and back again over and over, billions of times per second. When you die, those electrical signals stop. The ions settle into equilibrium across the membranes. The voltage differences that your neurons worked so hard to maintain simply dissipate. And the energy that was holding those gradients in place, the energy that was, in a sense, the physical substrate of your thoughts, where does it go? It becomes heat. The ions that were being pumped against their natural tendency now flow freely, and the potential energy that was stored in those gradients is released as a minuscule amount of thermal energy. Your last thought, whatever it was, ends as warmth. A few millionths of a degree in the fluid around your brain cells. That might sound deflating if you think about it one way, but think about it differently. The energy that powered your most profound idea and the energy that warms a cup of water are the same kind of energy. There is no special category for thought energy. There is no separate ledger for the energy of consciousness versus the energy of a burning log. Energy is energy. The universe does not grade it by importance. It all counts the same. Your muscles are another enormous energy sink. Even sitting still, they consume energy to maintain tone, to keep you upright against gravity, to keep your diaphragm contracting so you breathe. When you walk across a room, chemical energy in your muscle cells becomes kinetic energy, the energy of motion, along with a tremendous amount of waste heat. You are, I am sorry to say, a terribly inefficient machine. About 75% of the energy your muscles consume is lost as heat. Only a quarter becomes useful mechanical work. You are roughly as efficient as a steam locomotive. Every step you take warms the air around you a little bit more. Your heart, over the course of your life, performs a remarkable amount of work. It beats about 100,000 times per day, pushing roughly 2,000 gallons of blood through your vessels. Over 70 years, that adds up to something like 2.5 billion heartbeats, each one powered by energy molecules, each one converting chemical potential energy into the kinetic energy of flowing blood. When the heart stops, that steady expenditure ceases. The blood settles under gravity. The kinetic energy of its flow is absorbed by friction against the walls of your vessels, transformed into, you guessed it, Heat. Every form of energy your living body uses, electrical signals in the brain, mechanical work in the muscles, chemical synthesis in your cells, osmotic pumping in your kidneys, all of it eventually ends up as heat. You are, thermodynamically speaking, a machine that converts food into warmth. Everything else you do, thinking, moving, growing, healing, those are side effects of the heat production if you want to be cynical about it. Or, more accurately, the heat is the unavoidable tax on all those processes. Either way, the energy goes from chemical bonds to useful work to heat, and the heat goes into the environment. So where does the energy in those molecules come from? From the food you ate. And where does the energy in the food come from? Follow it back. Say you had a piece of bread. The wheat plant that made the grain in that bread grew in a field somewhere. It absorbed sunlight. And this is where the story gets beautiful, because the physics connects you to a star. Inside the cells of that wheat plant, there is a process called photosynthesis. You learned about it in school probably, but I want to tell you what it actually does in terms of energy. The plant takes carbon dioxide from the air and water from the soil, two simple, low-energy molecules, and using the energy of sunlight, it forces them together into glucose. Sugar, a high-energy molecule. The plant has taken energy from light and locked it into chemical bonds. Photosynthesis is an energy storage device. Sunlight goes in, sugar comes out. So when you eat the bread, you are eating stored sunlight. I want you to understand, this is not a metaphor. It is not a poetic way of speaking. It is a literal, physical description of the energy transaction. The energy in your muscles, the energy that lets you think and blink and breathe and pick up a cup of coffee, that energy traveled 93 million miles from a thermonuclear furnace, crossed the vacuum of space in about 8 minutes as a photon, hit a leaf in a field in Kansas or somewhere, got captured by a chlorophyll molecule, was used to forge a sugar molecule, ended up in a grain of wheat, was milled into flour, baked into bread, eaten by you, broken down in your gut, rebuilt into an energy molecule in your cells, and is now being used to power the neurons that are following what I am saying. That is the chain. Your body is running on starlight. And this raises a wonderful question that we should not skip over. Where does the sun get its energy? The sun is fusing hydrogen nuclei together in its core, slamming protons into each other at temperatures of about 15 million degrees. And when 4 hydrogen nuclei fuse into one helium nucleus, the resulting helium is slightly lighter than the 4 hydrogens it was made from. A tiny bit of mass has disappeared. And that missing mass has been converted into energy according to Einstein's famous relation. The sun is converting about 4 million tons of its own mass into energy every second. 4 million tons every second. And it has been doing this for about 4.6 billion years, and it will keep doing it for another 5 billion or so. So the sunlight that your wheat plant captured was itself the product of nuclear fusion, which was itself the product of mass being converted to energy. The chain goes nuclear mass to fusion energy, to light, to chemical bonds in a plant, to chemical bonds in your body, to the kinetic energy in your muscles, to the heat that keeps you warm. Every link in that chain conserves energy. Nothing is lost at any step. You can follow it forward. You can follow it backward. The accounting always works. When you die, all that stored chemical energy, the sugars, the fats, the proteins, the energy molecules, all of it is still there in your body. Your body does not suddenly lose its chemical energy the moment your heart stops. The molecules are still intact. The bonds are still holding. The energy is still locked inside, sitting in your tissues like food in a pantry after the cook has gone home. So what happens to it? Here is where biology takes over from physics for a moment, and then physics takes it right back. Your body, once it stops maintaining itself, becomes food. I know that sounds blunt, but it is exactly what happens, and there is a deep lesson in it. The bacteria that were already living in your gut, trillions of them, do not know you have died. They just know that the immune system which was keeping them in check has stopped working. The borders are undefended, and so they begin to eat. They break down your tissues the same way you broke down that piece of bread. They crack open chemical bonds in your proteins and fats and carbohydrates, and they extract the energy for themselves. This is decomposition. And I want to be very clear about what decomposition actually is, because there is nothing mystical about it. Decomposition is chemistry. It is oxidation, reduction, hydrolysis, fermentation. It is the same kind of chemistry that happened in your stomach when you digested your lunch. Bacteria and fungi are doing to your body exactly what you spent your whole life doing to plants and animals. They are harvesting stored chemical energy from organic molecules. And just like when you metabolized food, this process releases heat. A decomposing body is warm, not warm because it is alive. Warm because chemical reactions are occurring, bonds are breaking, and energy is being released as a byproduct. Some of that energy goes into fueling the microorganisms. Some of it escapes as thermal energy into the soil or the air. Some of it ends up in the bodies of insects and worms and beetles and everything else that arrives to participate in this great chemical recycling. Consider the nitrogen in your muscles. When you were alive, that nitrogen was locked into amino acids, the building blocks of your proteins. As bacteria decompose those proteins, the nitrogen is released, first as ammonia, then converted by other bacteria into nitrites and nitrates. Those nitrates dissolve in the soil water. A plant absorbs them through its roots. The plant uses that nitrogen to build its own proteins. An animal eats the plant. The nitrogen that was in your bicep is now in the leg muscle of a rabbit, helping it run through a field. The energy associated with those chemical bonds has been transferred, transformed, but not diminished. If you are buried, this process plays out over months and years. Your body's molecules gradually enter the soil ecosystem. Carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, calcium. These are nutrients, and they are valuable. The soil around a buried body becomes richer. Trees planted near old graveyards often grow remarkably well, and there is nothing mysterious about that. They are running on the chemical energy that was once in human bodies. If you are cremated, the process is faster and more dramatic, but the physics is identical in principle. Your body is exposed to extreme temperatures, roughly 1400 to 1800 degrees Fahrenheit, and the organic molecules in your tissues are oxidized rapidly. This is combustion. The carbon in your body combines with oxygen to form carbon dioxide. The hydrogen combines with oxygen to form water. And the energy that was stored in those chemical bonds is released as heat and light. The flame of the cremation furnace is, in a very real sense, your body's stored chemical energy being released all at once. It is the same energy that the sun put into a wheat plant, that the wheat plant put into a grain, that you put into your muscles and bones over a lifetime of eating. Released in an afternoon, that carbon dioxide drifts up into the atmosphere. It might be absorbed by a tree next spring. That tree might grow a fruit. Someone might eat that fruit. And then the carbon atoms that were once part of your body are now part of someone else's body, carrying energy along the same chain that has been running since the first plants captured the first photons of sunlight. Billions of years ago. Nothing disappears. The atoms circulate. The energy moves. The books balance. But I've been talking mostly about chemical energy, and your body has more than that. Let me go deeper. Your body contains roughly 7 billion atoms. Let me say that more carefully. 7 times 10 to the power of 27.